So many people are on social media. It's a connection point. It's a way that people oftentimes will express more of what's going on in their life than they do in person. Everyone that you see out there commenting and writing, everyone has hurts, everyone has pain, everyone has needs. And most of all, they all need Jesus. And so remember that as you interact with people online.
You are listening to Our Urban Voices with Dr. Alphonse Javed, a podcast that presents Christian narratives through diverse voices that impact urban ministry. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome back to our Urban Voices. I'm your host, Dr. Alphonse Javed. Today, I'm joined by Josh Collins. Our topic today focuses on social media as a way to communicate the gospel. Josh and his family moved to New York City in 2012 to work with Global Gates among the 100,000 plus immigrants from Bangladesh. He has experience living and working in India among South Asian Muslims and Hindus, as well as short-term work in Central America, Africa, and Thailand. Josh loves training people to connect and reach out to the nations. He has done a lot of work with social media outreach. So thank you so much for joining us today, Josh. How you doing, Josh?
Doing well. Glad to be here on a rainy New York day.
Yeah, right. So we have known each other for a while, but for the sake of our audience, our listeners, would you mind sharing a little bit briefly about your family? I believe family is so important because it makes us humans. It's relatable. So please go ahead, share a little bit about your family.
Yeah, sure. My wife and I, we this year in the summer will be 16 years of marriage. And we actually are both from the Midwest originally. That's where we met and got married. And then about just a little over 10 years ago, the two of us and our 1-year-old baby girl, our firstborn, moved to New York City, to Queens, and with the goal of being part of a new initiative called Global Gates that was beginning to reach out to unreached people groups throughout, at that time, just New York, but also with the goal of eventually spreading that around urban centers throughout not just North America, but the world. And so we've moved here, been here 10 years, actually still in the same apartment because you wouldn't know it, but we landed in a rent-controlled apartment when we got to New York. And we've been here ever since. We've had 2 more kids since then, another girl and then a boy. And so we're having lots of fun as parents, raising them here in the city with all the unique experiences that they get. And yeah, that's what our family is all about.
Yeah, man. And hold on to that apartment, bro. Those don't come along anymore. So Josh, tell us a little bit about your journey. Where did you start and how did you eventually get involved in using social media as a way to reach out with the gospel?
Yeah. So when we first moved to New York City, God had put South Asians really on our heart. I had spent 6 months in college working in the eastern part of India underneath a career missionary and just kind of doing an apprenticeship and learning and just spending time. I lived in a village for a month. I mean, it was just, one of those unique once in a lifetime experiences. It just really opened my heart to the people there. And then as my wife and I got married and began pursuing what kind of ministry God would have us be part of, the nations just kept being on our minds and our hearts, and specifically South Asians. And so when we realized we couldn't go overseas, we ended up joining up with Global Gates to come and work in New York City with the Bengali people that are here. And so it very traditional. We came and, we've done everything from door to door outreach to just meeting people in parks and coffee shops and just really trying to connect with people to find people who were curious to know about Jesus, who perhaps had needs that we could pray for, needs that maybe we could meet by connecting them with local, Christian English centers or other things like that. And so that's what we did for really the first 6 or 7 years of our ministry here. And then just before 2020, we had a chance to take a small sabbatical. And when we came off of that, there was a training for learning how to do social media outreach. And this was such a God thing because literally this was January 2020. There was a huge training right there at your old place, Calvary Baptist in Manhattan, where we learned about how to use social media for outreach and how to really go about it. And so a small team was put together to reach out to Bengalis. And as we were preparing to launch our first kind of ads and social media posts on these new pages that we had created out of this outreach training that we had received, little did we know that, our entire city, our entire world was going to go into lockdown, and people are just stuck at home on the internet with nothing else to do but scroll social media all day. And so we began seeing responses from people. One of the first ads that we ever did was just a simple prayer in Bengali that my teammate recorded. We threw it over some B-roll footage of New York City, and we watched it get shared hundreds and hundreds of times, not just in the US where we were paying for it to show as an ad, but also around the world. And people just resonating with that prayer and for protection and for help and for God to provide for our first responders and things like that. And we saw just a response of people, messaging us saying, "Hey, can you pray for this need in my life? Hey, I really want to know more. What's this Jesus thing all about?" And that was really our intro into social media, and have been using it ever since.
Fantastic, bro. This is really, it's a blessing to witness how God prepares his people before things take place. I'm just so glad to hear, because I was there in that training too. And you're right. It's just only God knew what the missionaries needed and how it's going to play a vital role. Have you found social media outreach to be a particularly fruitful in specific group of people, like in a specific age group or region, or among atheists?
Yeah, that's a great question. The thing is, so many people from every walk of life use social media. There's always a percentage of people that are out there online who are really searching for something new. And they don't always know where to go. They have these questions in their heart, these needs that are just really gnawing away at them. And it's oftentimes those people that a social media post or an ad can capture their attention about a particular need, like I just mentioned with the prayer need that was going on during the early days of 2020. And we found that it's very good at connecting us to a lot of people that we wouldn't normally meet. I think one of the struggles of doing ministry in an urban area like New York has always been just people don't have time, and they don't have space. They're, especially among the immigrant communities that I spend a lot of time among, they're often living maybe 2 or 3 families in a couple bedroom apartment to make ends meet. Maybe they're a single guy who's over here working and sending money back to his family, but he's not living alone in a bachelor pad. He's living in a 1-bedroom house with 6 other guys and 3 sets of bunk beds in a room. Yeah. And so like having the space to have these kind of conversations, and these guys maybe are working 50, 60 hours a week, and they get off work, they ride the subway another hour home, they grab something to eat, and they go straight back home to their apartment that's very crowded. And so just meeting these people is often very difficult for believers. But through social media, we're able to connect with them. One of the groups that we found that was a big kind of a surprise that I wouldn't have thought of at first was women. A lot of women in the Bengali community that we try to reach, when they come over here, they're either working full time with very limited free time to go and meet people and make new contacts, or they're married, they're at home, they're taking care of kids, taking care of the house all day, and they don't get a lot of chance to get out and meet other people as well. But all these women are on social media, and we're seeing them respond to different ads and ask questions that maybe they wouldn't ask if they just met a stranger, in the bus line or whatever that might be.
Oh man. A lot of people thinking about social media, I'm thinking about different age group. So a lot of people are not on social media. Why is it still important to have this type of ministry?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And we see it as important as we always describe it, this social media as a outreach strategy. It's not the outreach strategy. There are, of course, people that aren't on social media who would never, really connect. There's people who are on social media who they're just there for fun only. They never really look for anything deep. If they saw an ad for something about Jesus, they would scroll past it faster than anything else. And so we realize that it's not for everyone, but we realize that there are people out there who are using this, and that it's an effective tool for finding some of these seekers that are out there. One of the biggest part, especially when we think of like unreached people groups, is that there just aren't enough believers in that population for everyone to hear the gospel through normal social network means. And so the gospel has to come in some way, often from outside. And we found that social media can be an entry point. And for us, it's also part of a bigger strategy. Everything's not online, and it flows into hopefully person-to-person ministry at some point, and that's part of our strategy as well.
So it's going to push back a little more on this idea of a generational gap and people who I agree. I love your response that it's a strategy, it's not the strategy. So I love that. That's very clear distinction. But let me push back a little more. Social media does not always come easy for older generation, and you understand that. I understand that. World understand that. But my question is, what are the special skills or language skills necessary to engage in this type of ministry?
Yeah. It's kind of surprising because while we often think of social media as not something that older generations are, very adept at, you can ask any young person, why do you not spend a lot of time on Facebook? And it's not because Facebook is a bad platform. It's actually very efficient at connecting people and sharing, and has a lot of features that even some of the other social media sites don't have that young people do flock to. But one of the biggest reasons why young people don't hang out on Facebook is because all the old people are there. And like that's literally the reason. And so we find that there are people from every generation that are out there on there, even among our Bengali community that we're trying to reach out to. There's a significant amount of older people, and they're often the ones with the most amount of time. Maybe they're here living with their kids. They're no longer in the workforce. They're retired. And they're just hanging out all day, and it gives them an outlet to go and share stuff, and to talk. And so we learned that it's important, obviously if you're reaching out to a group that speaks another language, having those language skills is very important. Our team is not just English speakers. We have Bengalis who are part of our team that this is a way for them to be able to share the gospel with more people. For a lot of groups, it's like that, but it's also just understanding how to communicate with people online. In one sense, people are often very much more open to sharing details, sharing what's on their mind, so to speak, because of the anonymity of being online. But on the other hand, you have to ask sometimes more specific questions to kind of draw out what's really going on in their hearts and get past kind of those fronts sometimes people put up on social media.
Yeah. Let me take you back to about two questions earlier. You mentioned a little bit about running an ad. So can you share a little more about that? How specifically how you and your team use social media, how this running ads and all that mechanically, and what do you do? Just walk us through briefly.
Yeah. So our team, we spend the majority of our reaches and things that our pages get is through advertising. We specifically mostly are using Facebook right now because we've done some research, and in the world and in Bangladesh, where a lot of the people that we're working with come from, that's where 90-something% of social media traffic is Facebook. So we know if we're going to hit people, Facebook's kind of where we need to be. But we also sometimes cross post on other things as well. And so we use ads. Basically, you set up a page. It's through a business account. So that way, when someone messages us, they don't see that they're messaging Josh. They think they're messaging our page. And so and then as a business page, we can assign several people to be on the back side of that. And so if someone messages us, I could respond to it, or maybe one of our Bengali teammates who has access to that messaging could respond. And the person that's talking to us, they don't know that there's different people that respond. It's like if you have a problem with your phone and you message Verizon on Facebook, you won't see that you're messaging, Sam, who works for Verizon. You just see you're messaging Verizon. And that's kind of how it is for our page. That's how it works. And so what we do is we'll send out ads, and we have different types of ads. Some ads are just very simple, like kind of to introduce people to the idea, get them familiar with our page. Hey, here's a short clip of the Jesus film for you to watch. Here's a short video about somewhat, maybe the introduction to someone's testimony. They're talking about, hey, I used to struggle with this. I used to have problems. Then Jesus changed my life. Click to watch more about how Jesus changed my life. And then we take them to a second video. Maybe that's not an ad, that's just on our website or on Facebook. And they can watch that to kind of get the fuller story of what's going on there. And the crazy thing with things like Facebook is it'll track, what people are watching your video, how much people are watching of your ad, who's watching it. It doesn't tell you specific individuals, but okay, maybe more men than women responded to this ad. Maybe 5% of the people who watch this ad click to watch the second video. And then what you can do is you can even do things like, hey, everyone who clicked to watch our second video, let's specifically next month send them an ad that then asks them to, if they have questions about Jesus, they could send us a message. Or if they want a free Bible, they can send us a message and we can mail that to them or deliver it. And so there's lots of options within advertising. One of the things they say about channels like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever is you as the user are not their customer. Their customer they're trying to sell to are advertisers. And so we just going to take advantage of that in using those same things that Coca-Cola or whoever is using to try and reach out to you online and show you those ads and get your attention. We're able to use those for the gospel, and it's very cost effective, and people can respond right there. In one click, they can be watching a video about Jesus, click to send us a message, and now be in a conversation with someone over Messenger about how they can know more about Jesus. And so we found that that's very cost effective compared to some of the older methods, like putting up a billboard where who knows if people remember the phone number, they're in their car, they can't call you while they're driving down the freeway at 70 miles an hour. But on Facebook, they see an ad, they can click it, and they can be reading the Bible 2 seconds later.
Yeah, man, I love all of this conversation. I remember when the training back then, the same training you were talking about, the guy showed that one example where he looked for certain boots. Remember that? but then he was like on another website, unrelated, completely like a random web, searching something else, and the ad showed up on the top, and I was like, wow. So that kind of stuff is just mind blowing. That has improved my ministry approach to marketing, and as from outreach perspective. Thank you so much. So when you communicate online, what type of reaction do you usually get? People can be very hateful, and they can be hateful online too.
Yeah. It's really a double-edged sword, I think. And it's kind of the same dynamic happening in both the good and bad of the reactions. People are often sort of uninhibited online. Sort of the anonymity of it kind of sometimes really compels them to express themselves more strongly than they probably perhaps would if they were just sitting with you in a room and talking about the same subject matter. And so we get, everything. There's the negative side of that where, our page, we get death threats. We get a lot of, wow, you Christians are going to hell. This is a bunch of lies. This is a bunch of other words New Yorkers might use that I'm not going to use on your podcast. We get a lot of those comments, and sometimes we'll, if we get death threats, we'll just block those people because we realize we really want our page to be somewhere where if you're a seeker, you can find our page, you can feel it's safe to ask a question on the main page without getting death threats or things like that. And so we take care of that, and we don't show our ads and stuff to those people anymore who are sending the death threats. They kind of get removed from our database as far as who Facebook wants to send things to. And so that's the negative side of it. And we deal with that. And, we're very protective. Sometimes we'll have our Bengali believers will, anonymously will share their story or something either written or through a recording that's been done. And so we'll a lot of times when we run an ad like that, we'll say, hey, this ad is about you and your story. Why don't you not look at the comments? Because we'll take care of those. And, we don't want you, getting too discouraged by some of the things that you see out there. But on the other hand, because people feel less inhibited, because they don't have their 7 roommates staring over their shoulder as if they, if they pulled out a physical Bible, perhaps in their apartment, that might happen, or their family or whoever they're living with here in New York. It can often be freeing. They can ask that question. And sometimes we find that some people will raise objections to us in our comments. And our kind of rule is we'll give a short response and invite people to talk more in private. And when we are able to invite people into those private messaging conversations, a lot of times as we answer those questions, those defenses come down. And then we really get a lot of people who are hurting, who are searching for something, who aren't finding the answers they need in what they've been taught their entire life, and who are open to hearing more about Jesus. And so we try to keep the front side of our page very clean. We try not to engage people. One of my teammates found out very early on. He was very the type of, he loves to talk to people. He loves to answer questions. So he tried to respond to everyone commenting on the page with a Muslim objection to the Jesus content we were sharing. And of course, every time he responded to one comment, 3 more of that person and 3 more of their friends would leave another comment to his reply. So, the replies are multiplying four times or so each time he's responding, and he's spending all day responding to the same people. And it's like, hey, just answer them once. And if they want to talk more, invite them to talk one-on-one. And you also find that when people are messaging you one-on-one, they're not feeling like they have to put up a front for all their friends or their community that sees them. And they're often able to be a little more real, and you can deal with those objections. Or they're still a jerk one-on-one, and you can just block them. So either way, we have to find that that's a very effective strategy for kind of pulling people to the side and giving them some space. And sometimes they put up a front, and it's just a front. And so we've often found that to be the case.
I love both aspects. I love what you just said about people, and it's true, especially in Eastern cultures. You just want to show off other men that, oh, look at me, how religious I am. Even if you have desire, even if in that conversation somewhere you feel convicted by the Holy Spirit, you're just going to continue to pursue the same agenda because the peer pressure and social environment that you live in and your life is determined by your cultural reality, which is religious culture, as opposed to individualistic culture that we live in. They are dealing with communal aspect of that. So I totally see that point. With the death threats, do you ever send that over to the, let's say, Facebook or YouTube to tell them like, hey, here's the user sending these kind of threats? Because they do also they actually not only block people, they cancel they send them warnings, and then they cancel accounts. Has that ever happened?
Yeah, that's happened a few times. Obviously the more specific a threat is, we'll report it. If it's not like a death threat and it's just very negative, or just like, you guys are all liars, whatever, we'll often just block those people. And, I'm not going to try to get someone kicked off Facebook for calling me a liar. But obviously if people are making threats, we'll also report them as we're banning and deleting their comments. Sometimes though, we often will leave one negative comment on the page, just to make it look like, we are letting people talk, but then we'll delete all the rest.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So if someone considers the gospel and eventually becomes a Christ follower, what type of challenges might they face, and how does your ministry help them?
Yeah. And that's just such an important question, because obviously the people that we're reaching out to are coming often from a Muslim or a Hindu background. And so their immediate life is often not going to get better when they become a follower of Jesus. It might, on the inside, hopefully it is, but on the externals, there's so many things that they might lose that are in jeopardy. And so what our typical goal is we connect with people online, is to connect them with someone in person, as quickly as realistically possible. We do some vetting online, so that way we know, okay, this person is legit. This isn't some kind of trap. One of the great things is, in a city like New York, here in the U.S., it's a little safer for us to go meet someone in a public place, and if we don't know them, as opposed to, but we'll, sometimes, hey, we encourage our team, hey, maybe bring a second person to hang out, nearby who can come get you if things don't seem right. Maybe that kind of stuff. And of course, overseas where they're doing this in much more difficult places, the connection with people offline is often, they may spend several months vetting someone online before they're able to connect them with someone in person just for safety reasons. But our goal is to get them to someone who lives in their neighborhood if possible. Obviously, our first goal is if there's a Bengali believer who lives in a neighborhood near them, we want to connect them in person so they can build that relationship. We often think about, the loss of things like maybe housing or, maybe sometimes they won't get promoted at their job or that kind of persecution as being the thing. But I think the biggest loss often for our believers from these backgrounds is that community. They suddenly are cut off from those relationships. And that's some of the biggest pain points we find. And so our goal is to try to connect them with a community as much as possible, whether that's a local Muslim background believer fellowship that we have, if they're able to connect with that, or, if maybe they live in a farther away neighborhood and there's not Bengali believers in that area, maybe we can connect them with some through online, but also a local church that they can be a part of that's willing to say, hey, we don't understand everything about your culture, but we're willing to learn and we're willing to walk alongside you and help you. And so that's some of the ways that we're able to connect. And then also we have some partners in various neighborhoods around the city with some sister organizations that are doing things through English centers or helping people get jobs and other things like that, that we're going to say, hey, let's connect you with this group and see if they can help you with this specialty that maybe our online group can't do on our own. And so we try to do those things to help people as well.
That's really cool, Josh. What are the most important things to consider when it comes to discipling a new believer through an online connection?
Yeah, I think one of those I sort of maybe was hinting at a little earlier,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the
you did.
longer they stay online, the more chance, because online, of course, is anonymous and it's freeing and sort of uninhibited. If you do that too long, then that sort of becomes the reality where now they never talk about these things in person. This is not part of their outside, social life at all. This is just something online for them. And that can be a danger. And so that's one of the reasons why we try to, as much as possible, move those along from just an online relationship to offline as quickly as possible, because we realize that it is in their community where they're going to have to live this out. They're going to have to face that persecution eventually, perhaps. If we want to see movements to Christ happen among their people, that it can't just stop with that first believer who gets met online, that our goal of meeting them online is so that as they're discipled, they're reaching out to their real life social networks, their friends and family and other things, and that they're able to share what Jesus is doing in their life with those people. And so that's one of the most important things we find to consider. And then the rest are just, I think it's just, your normal discipleship things. Encourage them to grow deep with Christ, encouraging them to spend time in the Word and let that be the center of their life. So that way they have those answers, and train them how to find those answers on their own as they study Scripture. So that way they're not just coming back to us constantly and saying, okay, what about this? What about this? What about this? But rather, it's teaching them to fish instead of just giving them fish. And so all those things that often apply to in-person discipleship also apply to offline as well. And so we try to make those connections and help them in those ways.
Yeah, very good practical advice, brother. So social media and internet allow someone even from a very rural area to engage with people across the globe. That's why internet is phenomenal. But my question is, how can Christians do this kind of ministry? What should they do or do not? And I'm thinking about what is that they should avoid commenting, or what they should avoid, so they are not instigating or provoking hatred, or from out of ignorance they are not doing something that cause offense for no reason. So gospel can be offense to others, that's fine, but we shouldn't. So that's basically what I'm looking for. How can Christians do that? What should they or they shouldn't do when they engage in online ministry?
Yeah, that's such an important question. Because if I was to open up Facebook right now and just look at some of the posts and things that Christian friends and others that I know around the country may be talking about, or the way they engage, I would go, oh, I don't know if I would want that person suddenly switching and posting a lot of Jesus stuff, because people are going to see both these things that they're posting and the Jesus stuff, and they're not going to want any part of the Jesus stuff. So obviously some things that I encourage people to, hey, if you're going to have a very, use your social media presence as a believer, some of the things that you can do is, one, obviously, avoid things that are unnecessarily divisive. Like, you have a favorite sports team. That's awesome. And you can post support for your sports team. But if you're going online to pages and commenting about how you hate this player and how you, this team, you just can't stand anyone who ever lives in this city, like, that's not going to play very well if you're suddenly trying to share Jesus with other people in those contexts. We could say the same thing. I think the biggest one, of course, is politics. Our country, very politically divided, and you go online and it looks even more divided than what the reality is. And if everything, on your social media is, hey, my party is number one, and anybody who believes the other party, is obviously a child of Satan, you've turned off half the people that you perhaps could be reaching out to, because of the way, not because of what you believe in, but because of the way that you are engaging it online. And so I encourage people, hey, think about what you're posting online. This is, I think, should be true for everyone, but especially if you're considering, hey, how can I develop more of a ministry presence online? Think about what kind of things you're posting, think about what you're sharing. But you have so much opportunity. There are people who will see your posts who don't know Christ. If you're a local church that's in an area, your members, through sharing things that your local church might post on your Facebook page or other social media accounts, you have a tremendous organic reach where you don't have to go into things like advertising. Our team's using advertising because we're working with an unreached people groups where there's not a lot of believers already among this people group. But your church has a lot of believers perhaps in your town or neighborhood. If you guys were consistently sharing things and had sort of a strategy as a church or as individuals to promote Christ through your social media accounts, you could have a tremendous impact. Just even things like, hey, sharing a 30-second clip of you sharing the Bible verse that you read this morning, and just, hey, when I do my devotions in the morning, I want to post, maybe just one of the verses that I read. That can be such an encouraging thing. Or maybe it's, hey, this year January is a great time for resets. So this is I want to share, I want to start praying for my community online more. Maybe you're my friend, maybe you're a coworker, maybe you're an acquaintance. Hey, every day I'm going to post a prayer, but if you have something you want me to pray for, you can either, private message me, or you can just post it in the comments and I'll pray for you each day. And that could be a way that you engage people. We found that, across the world, both our team, as we're doing stuff both in New York and in Bangladesh, but also other teams we know that are doing stuff around the world, prayer is such a gateway for people to connect. And so offering to pray for people's needs, being that sort of presence in people's life that brings peace into situations, you can be that online by the way that you engage with people, by the method that you use for engaging. If people see that, they're going to look and go, hey, maybe I should message this person when something's going on in my life that I need prayer for. Maybe I should ask them about, how are you so calm with all this stuff going on and all the things in your life? When I read your post, I don't get mad. I don't, get angry. I just feel calm and at peace. What's going on there? And those can open doors for you to share Jesus, I think, with the people that are around you, and really be a presence and the light of Christ online.
Yeah. I love the idea that believers are supposed to be, our life is not private life. If we're living for Christ, it's a public life, right? And then our profiles are public profiles, right? If you are online, it's online. And it's there unless you have certain settings, and still, through your friends, other people can see you.
Right.
So there is like a lot of those reasons. But in the end of the day, it's the mindset. If I choose to live for Christ, and then I could actually benefit from all these social media interactions and being public out there, so people can hear. Simple thing. I love this very simple thing, prayer. And you already mentioned that even during the pandemic, the Bengali prayer was bringing a lot of connections. So a lot of time, I think here in the United States, we undermine the power of prayer. And part of that is like, oh, what a big deal, just prayer. But at the same time, in religious communities, prayer is, or religious cultures, whether you're talking about over 1 billion people in India, or you're talking about over 200 million Muslims in Pakistan, or you're talking about Bangladesh, the same way, about 2 million, 200 million, close to that now. So you're all over Indonesia, everywhere. Asia in general is a very spiritual and religious type of continent. And there, the prayer has value. And I think it's an important thing to put that prayer out. And I think sometimes we take prayer, as a pastor, I'm saying this, we think that, oh, prayer is a private thing. You do it. If you're doing it publicly, you are trying to be show off. But in this case, that's exactly what you need. It's not a show off, but you need to be publicly doing, but not as a show off person, rather to glorify God and to evangelize, to share the gospel. Do you have anything else you want to add to this episode?
I just want to encourage people to think about the ways that they interact with people online and how they can use that to glorify God and share Christ. And yeah, that's something I've seen. Just there's tremendous, so many people are on social media. It's a connection point. It's a way that people oftentimes will express more of what's going on in their life than they do in person. Everyone that you see out there commenting and writing, everyone has hurts, everyone has pain, everyone has needs. And most of all, they all need Jesus. And so remember that as you interact with people online.
Amen. All right, Josh. So if listeners wants to get in touch, how can they do so?
Yeah, they can either go to globalgates.info, which is our organization's website, and just there's a sort of a contact us thing and mention social media, and you'll get in touch with me, or you can email me at jcollins@globalgates.info.
Fantastic. And we will include in the episode description all of this, all these different links, will include them in the episode description. And for the last thing, because we talk about heavy topics, and even though some of the conversations we have are joyful, it was wonderful. I'm very actually excited, but still in the middle of that, you talk about death threats too. So topics are heavy, no matter how you look at it. But anyways, I would like to ask you to tell us a joke to lighten the mood. That's how I want to close. I want to hear a joke from you.
All right. Well, did you know, Alphonse, that before I got into social media that I was actually looking to become a locomotive engineer?
No.
Yeah, I really was excited about it, but then I learned you had to train every day.
Oh, look at you. Okay. Oh man, usually I get like very clean, clear dad's joke. And I was like, okay. Thank you so much for being on the show again. That was Josh Collins.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you to all our listeners. We truly could not do this without you. If you learned something, have a topic suggestion, or would like to leave us feedback, drop us a note at oururbanvoices.com. Be sure to subscribe to the show and leave an honest review wherever you listen to your podcast.
You've been listening to Our Urban Voices with Dr. Alphonse Javed, which presents Christian narratives through diverse voices that impact urban ministry.